Now let's discuss what's supposed to take place in the meeting between Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump in Alaska. Now, yesterday he sort of went into it a little bit at this unhinged, totally off the rails press conference, but we didn't get a whole lot of clarity. Let's go through it. Now, he discussed many topics over about an hour and a half. For example, that he wanted to, or that he was authorizing a federal takeover of Washington, D.C., and that may involve, in fact, as he explained, the deployment of thousands of soldiers with the U.S. military, allegedly to deal with crime, even though crime is down 30%, and D.C. has a lower crime rate than dozens of cities in America, and a murder rate specifically that is lower than several other cities and half that of St. Louis. But notwithstanding that, I'll deal with this whole federal takeover issue in a different video at a different time, focusing specifically on Ukraine. He said a lot of things that were inflammatory and outrageous, as Trump is wont to do, especially anytime there is a negotiation or a meeting that's going to be coming up between him and Zelensky, or him and Vladimir Putin. Now, if you come to expect this, it's a little bit less startling, but nonetheless, the things he said, let's go through a couple of them. First of all, he expressed that he was annoyed that Zelensky might have to get approval from his legislative body, which in Ukraine is known as the Verkhovna Rada, in order to authorize any territorial concessions. Now, the United States, if it was in Ukraine's position, the president himself, Donald Trump, would have to go to Congress and get congressional approval to make territorial concessions. I mean, that's obvious, it's clear. There's also a lot of private property that is involved in the areas that may be the subject of these territorial concessions. They respect property rights in Ukraine. And so does Volodymyr Zelensky. This is a democracy. So that was ridiculous by Trump. The second thing is that he suggested somehow Ukraine was responsible for starting the war. The war should have never happened. Great. Go tell that to Russia. How many times have they invaded other countries under Vladimir Putin? Again and again and again. It's utterly and patently ridiculous. Remember, Russia is the one that is 100% responsible for this illegal war of aggression and the genocide that has happened every single day. He confused Russia with Alaska several times. I mean, it was a complete mess. Now, of course, as I've explained, even having this meeting was a complete failure of Trump's foreign policy and a giant mistake. Remember, it is Vladimir Putin who has doubled his aerial attacks, every one of which is a war crime, sending drones and ballistic missiles into maternity hospitals and residential apartment buildings and schools, old nursing homes filled with elderly Ukrainians. He has doubled those attacks since Trump took office. Okay, and every time Trump has asked for a ceasefire or made any kind of request, it's always met with a middle finger and more violence against Ukrainian civilians. So, despite that, Trump is inexplicably rewarding Russia with a face-to-face meeting in Alaska, which is symbolic for Russia because many Russian nationalists believe it's sovereign Russian land. They talk about taking it back. In fact, Dmitry Kirill, I believe is his name. I don't know. He's a Russian. I don't care about saying it right. Actually posted on Twitter a picture of 4 former Russian churches in Alaska, like a veiled threat, if you know how Russians communicate. And they even have billboards all over eastern Russia saying that Alaska is actually part of Russia. So this entire thing is a mistake and a debacle in and of itself. But as to the fundamentals of what will take place in Alaska, it's not clear. And of course, that's not helped by the fact that Steve Witkoff had this massive blunder where he went and met in Moscow with his good friend Vladimir Putin, tongue-in-cheek I say that, but it seems like it, and came back with 3 different proposals. He made a mistake. Nobody knew what the hell the actual proposal from Russia was. No, was it going to be Ukraine giving up all of Donbass in exchange for a mere promise for a ceasefire? Was it going to be freezing the front lines, and just freezing them in place? Was it going to be a swap of Zaporizhia and Kherson for Donbass? Who knows? Those are 3 totally different offers, and he said all three of them on different days to the Europeans and to the Ukrainians. So what exactly is going to happen, what exactly is the offer on the table, is not really clear. There's supposed to be further trilateral discussions between European leaders, Zelensky and Ukrainian representatives and representatives from the White House and or Trump in the coming days. So the situation is fluid. We don't know exactly what's going on. We know the whole thing is a mistake, but it could still turn out basically okay. We'll see. It could turn out really bad. It could turn out really great. It could turn out something in the middle, which is probably the most likely. Of course, come back here and I will have these updates, have this analysis. I really appreciate you guys watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe so I can put more and more work into this and keep you guys up to date on what's happening. from the perspective of someone who actually lived in Ukraine and served in the Ukrainian armed forces and is in touch with people on the ground there every single day. Take care, guys. Love you all.